about James Gunn and why Marvel Studios should be sweating over James Gunn's DCU plans. And I'm going to read the man's thoughts. It's very short and sweet. This topic will be short and sweet. I don't think I'll be spending a half an hour on this one like I did with the reactions of John Wick. I didn't even spend a half an hour. That's bullshit. It was about 20 minutes. But yeah, he's been out speaking. It's coming in from MovieWeb. One of the worst photoshops I've ever seen, incidentally. If that's Anthony Lund who's did that, then fuck me, mate, step up your game. I could do that in 2 minutes. And I will sort of... I'm going to go in hard on this guy here. That's totally unacceptable. You can do better with the cut out of the hair as well, mate. Fucking a razor. 50% transparency, soft brush. Take it out, mate. That's totally unacceptable. Get your shit together. You're getting fucking paid for this. I think. Do better. Wee water, my friend. I don't know where that came from. Mark Ruffles had this to say about James Gunn, the hiring of him as the sort of Kevin Feige over at Warner Brothers with your other man, whose name I am blanking on, and I always blank on his name. But there's a sort of duality over there. There's two guys in control of all things DCU. But this, I'd say, doesn't matter. I would say hire James Gunn. What's this in context of? What is this? I'm just going to read this little snippet. However, while appearing at Emerald City Comic Con, Ruffalo was asked about Marvel's comic book rival and what kind of advice he would give DC Studios. In response, Ruffalo took the moment to acknowledge that Gunn could cause some problems for the MCU in the future. Well, he isn't going to cause problems for the MCU. He's going to make magic and potentially very, very good things happen for DC and Warner Brothers. What DC do with their movies and what the MCU do with their movies, they aren't linked. They're two separate entities, giving us two separate worlds with very interesting characters, be it villainous characters or heroic characters. They are existing in different planes. They do not interconnect. One shouldn't really have an impact and influence on the other. I understand if you're releasing them within weeks of each other in the theatres, they are going to impact and cannibalise on each other's box office, and you could get into a versus who's won the box office between DC and Marvel. But realistically, James Gunn isn't going to hurt Marvel, and Marvel aren't going to hurt James Gunn. They're doing different things, and I'll get into it. I'll get into it more. That's what I had to say. I would say hire James Gunn, because nobody does it better, and Marvel should be sweating because James Gunn is a really gifted filmmaker, and I think he's going to be amazing for that franchise. Well, look, I don't disagree with that. I think he is going to be amazing for DC. A lot of people dislike James Gunn. A lot of Snyderverse fans have got their bee in their bonnet, which I think is a Scottish phrase that will go over the head of the vast majority of people who are not from Scotland, about James Gunn. They've got hatred for the man. They want him to fail. They're attacking him on social media, all because he ditched Henry Cavill, a man who I love. I loved Man of Steel. It was one of my favourite superhero movies. I really enjoyed it. I liked the direction it took with Superman. We had enough of Christopher Reeve. Great though he was really bad in parts as well as Clark Kent, Jor-El, Superman. It was really cheesy. The subway is still the safest and most reliable form of transport. Stop, don't do it. The people, there was bad moments under Christopher Reeve. Henry Cavill went darker under the tutelage of Zack Snyder. I really enjoyed it. But you have to move on. He's in his 40s now. You need a younger Superman to drive a new era forward into the next decade and beyond, potentially. So I'm not going to attack James Gunn. I'm not going to have a hard-on for James Gunn because he's making some unpopular decisions. When you are the head of an organisation like DC and you're trying to world build and compete with a Goliath in terms of box office in Marvel, you need to make unpopular decisions. This man's been under Kevin Feige, under the Disney umbrella, the machine. He's seen how they operate. He's seen how ruthless you need to be. And that's the first decision he's made. He's making a new Superman movie. He's making a new Batman movie. He's fucking released a new slate going forward into the next 5-6 years. He will be good for DC. DC need a unified vision. They need stability at the helm in terms of the executive, in terms of a creative force. I believe James Gunn will be fantastic. Should Marvel be worried about James Gunn though? I would suggest no, they shouldn't. I think Marvel should be worried about Marvel, because Marvel are really not anywhere near the gold standard they set 6-7 years ago with the MCU moving into the 2 Avengers movies in Endgame and Infinity War Endgame, because that's the right order. They've not been at that level since Tony Stark left for pastures new, since Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., also Steve Rogers, I'll just swap the two about because they're intrinsic to each other. Since they have left, it has been watered down, it's felt hollow, there is something missing and they need to address it. Marvel should be worried about Marvel. Kevin Feige, Bob Iger need to get together, and I think they've done it already, and get their shit together and save Marvel, because Marvel is fucking in danger of spiralling if they don't. They've got a great actor in Jonathan Majors as the big bad moving forward. This guy, it's his time. He's a likeable guy. I watched him with Paul Rudd, Lad Bible. I love the guy. Great persona. Brilliant actor. Dedicated. With them, they have got something to work around. Make magic happen. Don't worry about DC. As I says about DC 6 years ago, don't worry about Marvel. Make the most of what you have. They are both institutions. They are both brilliant in their own right. They have amazing characters at their sort of fingertips. DC have some of the best villainous characters the world has ever seen in terms of comic books. They have some of the best heroic characters: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, The Flash. I'll even give Nightwing a mention. They've got some of the greatest heroic characters that have been in sort of novel form, graphic novel form, for 50, 60 odd years, 70 odd years. They can make something special happen. They're tonally different to Marvel too, so they shouldn't be worried. In short, I said it was going to be a short and sweet topic, and it is. Mark Ruffalo's right. He is going to be good for DC, but he's wrong in that if he's saying, I don't think he even does say it at any point. And he does. Marvel should be sweating. They shouldn't. They should be worrying about themselves, focusing on themselves, doing their own thing, and then we can have 2 amazing companies producing brilliant content. I'm going to go into a video game analogy to end it. EA Sports and the sort of 2K franchise, FIFA, Madden, NBA, PES, Pro Evolution back in the day. When you have one company dominating and producing stuff, it's great at first, and then inevitably it waters down because there's no competition. They don't have to worry about making the same standard and bettering themselves year in, year out. When you have competition, everything levels up, or it should, and they both get better. They push each other on, so hopefully that's what we're going to get. Hopefully James Gunn will get DC's act together, make amazing movies, and Marvel will respond and like, and we'll get a fucking era of brilliant filmmaking. Incidentally, I was going to go back and speak about that briefly because there was news, not that, fuck's sake, there was news floating around about Marvel potentially getting their hands on the rights to Hulk, which of course Mark Ruffalo played, and still plays, I believe. There was rumours that they were, in their deal to sell Hulu, going to sort of acquire the rights to Hulk. And I don't know what my thoughts are on that. I think if that was 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I would have been much happier. Mark Ruffalo would have still had scope to tell a story. But of course, with that iteration of the character, they've already told his backstory over the course of 3 movies: Ragnarok, Infinity War and Endgame. We got the story of Thor and Ragnarok, of Hulk and Ragnarok. We got the story of Bruce Banner and Infinity War. And then we got the combined sort of 2 pairing, Smart Hulk and Endgame. They have done it intelligently over 3 different movies. They've got round it, circumvented the issue of rights and holding it, and not being able to make a sort of origins independent story with Hulk already with this iteration. So I don't know if there's scope to continue with Mark Ruffalo's version, with them acquiring the rights and doing something over the next 5, 6, 7 years. I think we've seen that. But of course, they're not thinking about 5, 6, 7 years. They'll be thinking about the next 10, 15, 20 years. If they have the rights, they can reboot everything. And they own the rights to the X-Men, they own the rights to all these different IPs now. They're just slowly but surely bringing everything back in-house after a disastrous 90s, I think it was, when they had to sell things off to keep in existence. The outlier being Spider-Man, but they seem to have a nice rosy deal with Sony just now, so maybe they're thinking long-term here. They're going to reboot, and we'll finally get proper Civil War storytelling. We'll probably get X-Men versus Marvel, or the Avengers storytelling happening. They're thinking long term, and you've got to respect that.